Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Baltron for the Nintendo Famicom. In this 1986 shoot-'em-up from Toei, it's $29.99, and the Bismarck Empire has invaded Star Lenion, where they're constructing the super weapon Baltron to destroy Earth. Now it's up to Starship Gestorius to make sure they, don't do that. This is a relatively early scrolling shooter, where you progress through one continuous level, alternating between space sections and cavern/enemy base sections until you reach Baltron. Destroy all the cores of Baltron, and you win. Just kidding, you start the next loop, which is the same, but with meaner enemies. Also with a new color palette, just to keep with the latest $29.99 space fashion. Basically all the enemies in this game are popcorn-style cannon fodder and ground or ceiling turrets, and most of them are pretty tame. You've got tiny rotating pods that fit the popcorn distinction pretty well, swooping wedge ships that'll either dive away from you or directly at you, they don't seem to care much either way, pink dishes that blow bubbles up at you, structures that can't decide if they're water towers or big fancy eggs on pedestals, and this colorful running guy who looks like he's late for a meeting but somehow got trapped in a space cavern. He doesn't even attack you or anything, just scurries around all distraught. Poor guy. Then there are the annoying enemies. Pinwheels that reflect your shots back at you, itty-bitty neon flashing UFOs that follow you around, and in later loops, the dreaded asteroids. When you shoot an asteroid, it breaks into a tiny asteroid that flies directly at you. And when you shoot the tiny asteroid, it breaks into an even smaller tiny asteroid that also flies directly at you. And when you shoot the even smaller tiny asteroid, it turns into a bullet that has your name on it. Brutal. There are some environmental hazards too. Fire gates and laser gates can only be destroyed by shooting their bases, and certain sections have really tight corridors where you have to thread the needle over pointy spires and between steel girders, which is actually pretty tough, because the hitbox on your ship is really big. But at least your ship has a good weapon loadout. The A button fires forward shots and ground bombs simultaneously, and the B button can activate different effects depending on your fuel level, which depletes gradually as you progress through the game. If your fuel meter is above the red marker, pressing B and up detonates a screen-clearing bomb. If your fuel meter is above the white marker, pressing B and down warps you to the next in-game checkpoint, with a fancy cutscene that's really drawn out but also really cool, so I can't complain. And the last function of the B button is turning your ship around. But I never really had any use for this, since you control the scrolling rate of the playfield just by nudging your ship forward and backwards as you fly. So I could just slow down to dodge and collect items whenever I needed. And speaking of items, special towers launch blue capsules to replenish your fuel, and sometimes they even launch yellow capsules to give you a brief stint of invincibility. Just try not to shoot those capsules before you grab them. Unless you're willing to cut your losses like me, since I actually found that the most effective strategy for space sections was just to fly along the ground avoiding everything, including fuel capsules, knowing that I'll most likely get blown up in a cave section before I actually run out of gas anyway. But I digress. The most important item to pick up is the koala bears. They give you an extra life. Why are there koalas hanging around in outer space, you may ask? I don't know, but I don't care either, because koalas are great. Plus, since one-up items in video games are typically a representation of your in-game character, my working theory is that a koala bear is piloting the ship, and that's delightful. Aesthetically, it may not seem like there's a whole lot going on in Baltron, since there are only two types of environment here, with the same enemies reused throughout the game, but those limited environments and enemies are well designed. I only wish the color palette in the first loop was as cool as the silver and gold scheme in loop 3. Even the display interface here is pretty neat, mostly because of the enemy radar screen. It's not all that useful aside from warning you about ships approaching from behind, but it's a nice touch anyway. The soundscape of this game is definitely steeped in some arcade roots, extra bloopy cannon noises, and over-the-top item pickup chimes. The only problem with that is hearing the upbeat "ba-da-doo-doo-doo" of a hidden bonus, only to realize that I just blew up whatever that bonus was before I could collect it, or even see it. Pretty sure there are some weird dodo bird bonuses here, but they're much more elusive than our beloved koala bears. Anyway, the background chiptunes are interesting because they sound more like a low-key Super Spy theme than a Cosmic Starship theme. Not that that's a bad thing, just interesting. And I also have to mention that the Baltron itself looks pretty sick. Definitely fits the bill for a biomechanical alien doomsday weapon, with that flashing core surrounded by electric pulses and wiggly nerve wires. It took me a while to figure out how to actually destroy it, because you have to shoot it in specific places in a specific order, but I figured things out eventually. And on that note, the difficulty curve of Baltron is pretty unorthodox. Aside from a few spikes here and there, the challenge level is actually fairly flat the whole way through, only really ramping up after each loop. I did need autofire and save states to learn the game, and I played through 3 whole loops that way, but once I got the hang of it, I was able to take down a single loop with autofire alone. Thank goodness I had enough koala bear bonuses to pad my stock of backup lives. Speaking of which, the most novel aspect of Baltron, naturally, is the koala bears. And my favorite part of Baltron, naturally, is the koala bears. And if I could change one thing about Baltron, I would add more koala bears. Okay, actually I'd true up the hit detection so I wouldn't get blown up by things that are close to, but not actually touching my spaceship, but more koala bears wouldn't hurt either. Overall, Baltron feels like a neat time capsule of the transition between more primitive scrolling shooters and what the shoot-'em-up genre would ultimately become. A fun and fascinating point in the evolutionary chain, full of biomechanical doomsday weapons, super spy music, and of course, koala bears.